Hi all, it's a beautiful Saturday morning here in the Bay Area. Hope you all are well. I'm just out here in the park enjoying some fresh air. Today I'm gonna make this video about sort of what COVID-19 means for the workforce and sort of my own opinions on what's happening. So I think what pops up in my mind more or less is that the workforce is a lot of the trends that were supposed to happen in sort of the future of work and sort of the labor market, like AI, automation, the loss of jobs due to employers knowing that they can automate a lot of very lower to mid-tier tasks. Uh, this is these trends that people and economists were predicting became very amplified and just accelerated in just the past 6 or 7 months. So we're getting like a crash course essentially more or less on how the workforce will be like in 10 years, but accelerated. And we're getting that sneak preview just right now. And I think my political value system has kind of shifted a bit. I feel like, I lived in Texas for several years and I became moderate. And then I came back to California and then all of a sudden, all of a sudden this stuff happened, right? And it actually made me a little bit more left. And my thinking is that, my thoughts on this are that my biggest fear is that you have a large swath of the labor market where, they can't go back to these old careers, but we don't have some sort of like very strong like industrial policy or sort of state intervention policy where we can help transition much of this workforce to the 21st century and 21st century specific jobs, right? So the sectors that are still viable right now are definitely still in technology, entertainment, media, and then maybe some like mid to high tier roles and sort of in retail, hospitality, direct to consumer, like all those things. But those require you to sort of be like a kind of entrepreneur type person. So I think that in general, I think in general, I feel like this is like something that kind of concerns me because when you don't have when you have a large sector of the labor force that can't participate in this new economy, you have social instability. And when you have social instability, that really leads to a lot of, I guess, chaos. That nothing really gets done, and I've really thought a lot about this because it's made me think about what I can do or sort of how we as a society to sort of help shift that, because I think many of us feel very aimless or helpless at this point because we don't, especially in the U.S., because we don't know exactly what the right feedback mechanisms or feedback loops are, right? So, this is something that's really, it kind of goes back to sort of what your values are in terms of governance, because, I think a lot of the thing in the United States that I've learned is, the whole idea of sort of state-led interventionism isn't something that would work well in here because we have a very big distrust for large institutions. It's sort of libertarian, rugged, individualist kind of streak of the United States is that makes us who we are. That's just something that I've had to just to recognize. It's much easier to do this in places like in East Asia, China, Korea, Japan, where you have a lot of the tradition of state-led economic development efforts that are very state-driven when it comes to sort of national crises, right? And I think that in general, the feedback loop will likely be very different in the United States. I think this is sort of what how I feel about this. Right? I feel like how should I put it? I feel like there needs to be some sort of infrastructure and buffer zone, something like UBI, where there's a way for people to transition to these new sectors. Um, because having changed professions myself, it ain't easy. Uh, it ain't easy in the sense that there's a lot of unknowns, and there may be knowledge gaps you bump into because when you're self-taught, it you're in a position where you don't know what you're unaware of your knowledge gaps because you have to kind of be in the professional environment to really understand that. And I think that career transitions are very tricky because you don't know what those are sometimes because you kind of find out in the middle of your training. Oh shit, I should have learned this stuff, right? So mitigating those risks are really needed because sometimes it's really hard to forecast. Okay, it might take a year or two to transition to this new sector. Uh, and also, there's a lot of talk about like the creator economy, where people are making a living writing on Substack, making art on Patreon, um, getting sponsorships on YouTube. Those new business models are popping up right now. Media is. I think I'm very for that, but not everyone makes a full-time living doing that because there's a lot of the media landscape is always going to be saturated. So I feel like my politics has kind of shifted where like we have to look beyond a post-capitalist model where like yes, it is important to make money to help uh, build resilient business models for the future, but we have to be recognized that we have to build a society where that does not dominate a lot of civil society. And I think this is a problem, the crux of US society that I feel like is problematic. And my critique is that the overemphasis of money by individuals has led to this very erosion in sort of like cohesion that was once a part of US society where essentially, there's so much anxiety that people have in the US because housing costs are very high, upward mobility is very limited unless you're in certain sectors of the economy or certain parts of the country. It's hard to have the same level of upward mobility in, let's say, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma versus, let's say, San Francisco, right? Those two different planets, two different markets, two different paths. It is a problem in the U.S. where you're you just have a very shrinking sector of, how do I say, paths for upward mobility. And we have to recognize that yes, capitalism can be good, but if it permeates all aspects of society to a point where you don't have a functioning society where in a healthy society that goes beyond money, then that's the big issue that I see in the United States. And I think we really see that with COVID, where a lot of our public health institutions are overstrained. We don't have any sort of plan to restrain, to just like, hey, let's bring people out of this, let's transition people out of this workforce. Countries like South Korea are already working on things like a Green New Deal, where they're working on a jobs plan to help create new jobs to help people transition to a digital economy. We don't have the level type of industrial policy. And I think that, in short, I think that there is, the U.S. has to really kind of rethink its governance model. If we were to look into shifting into sort of how do I call it? A post-COVID economy, because a lot of the feedback loops for government aren't working. I have friends that were once Democrat and turned Republican because they didn't know where their taxpayers' money were going. Even if they like the idea of funding infrastructure services, I will agree that much of it is very mismanaged in the United States. and for whatever reason. And I think that uh, we have to rethink sort of our model of governance and restructure what it means for the 21st century because it's not working right now. And what's happening is it's causing a lot of polarity in sort of the labor market where we haven't, and you have to go through, the problem is usually very obvious, but we spend a lot of time going through paperwork, where in reality we should just we should reconsider how funds are approved, what jurisdiction. We need a different model. Because if this model isn't fixed, we're just going to see erosion in civil society. So I think this is sort of my thoughts on what COVID is, how it's affecting the U.S. economy, and sort of what it means for U.S. governance. I think that my own opinion is that some sort of state-led driven industrial policy is sort of needed to help make a very healthy, competitive workforce. And I'm not quite convinced that we're there yet, and we have to. Um, I'm still at a loss of words of how I should contribute or what means that should be done. But I feel like this is something that uh, the feedback loops for government aren't working, and we have to really rethink this. So, thank you so much for listening. I hope to create more of these type of videos. I think this is this sort of like political stuff is a little bit separate from my sort of creative stuff that I put on my YouTube and Instagram and TikTok and Twitter. So, I just want to create a separate section because I feel like politics. I've kind of avoided it for a while, but I realized that if you avoid it, a lot of problems get worse and they'll eventually affect you. So I feel like there's some value in really rethinking of it, pushing this forward. So thank you so much.